welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Aries, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of October 2023. I hope you are well. I'm using the Tarot of the Abyss for you today. Now, before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That is link number 1 in the description box. The second link in the description box is to my private community, which is the Order of the Phoenix over on Circle. You can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost, plus hang out with a truly extraordinary group of people. So if that sounds like it might be your bag, you know what to do. Aries, it seems like a hot minute since we've spoken, so let's get some cards out and see what's going on with you. Could I have 3 cards for Aries, please? Whoa, there's the first one. Let's flip this around. We've got the King of Pentacles in reverse for your recent past. Right, current energy, please. Oh, okay. We have Page of Wands and 2 of Cups. I like that for you, Aries. What about what's coming towards Aries, please? Whoa, goodness. We have the Knight of Swords. Right, there you are at the bottom of the deck, and a very welcome sight indeed is the Emperor there. Now, you know, Aries, the Emperor is the card of Aries in the Major Arcana, right? But it is also a really profound card of getting one's shit together, I think. That's the way I tend to term this card anyway. I'm sure other people will term it differently, but sorry about the sun. This will all adjust in a minute. There seems to be tentative movements here, right? It may feel to you like not very much is happening, but I think rather than a huge overarching set of sweeping changes that are coming in for you, Aries, this seems to be focusing more on the things that you do actually have control over, the things that you should have control over, rather than the things that you've felt like you must have control over. And to that end, then, what I'm seeing here, it's a rebuilding from the ground up, actually, and tentative movements towards something which I'm going to term at this point much more fulfilling for you than where you have been. Now, that's not going to be very hard, because the whole of, well, more or less the whole of 2022 was somewhat of a trial for you, and certainly some way into 2023 too. I've described it before as a long protracted tower moment for you. But the dust is settling and things have been reconciled within you to such an extent that I do think that there is a willingness to start implementing what it is that you have learned, certainly in the last few months, in making small but fundamental changes in the way that you show up in the world. Let's get some clarifiers out before I say any more. Give these a shuffle too. Stick that in there. Oh, fucking hell. So, tell me about the King of Pentacles in reverse, please. Thank you. We have 1. Well, we have 3 actually going on here. So we have the 9 of Cups, we have the 8 of Cups, and we have the 5 of Pentacles. I like that, actually, even though it's come out in that order. I actually think it maybe came out in that order, but it doesn't really matter because the message is kind of the same anyway. And I like the message, so that's good. Tell me about Page of Wands and 2 of Cups. We've got Knight of Pentacles, 9 of Swords. Ooh, another 2, 4 of Pentacles and the King of Swords. And then tell me about the Knight of Swords. Holy shit. We've got the Magician and we've got the 2 of Wands. Yeah, this is, I feel, as I was saying there. Now, while I spend a few minutes just straightening up these cards, just take a look at that Temperance card at the bottom of the deck. Now, like all the cards in the tarot, Temperance card has a myriad of meanings. They're multivalent, you know. They contain very many messages, and we're looking for the context in which the messages are occurring, so that we can get a sense of what it actually means in the moment. And here for you, we have both profound healing This is what the Temperance card talks about, right? With the alchemical process of transmuting something that has been very, very painful into something that now has meaning for you. And I think that in terms of personal work, I'm not sure that there's any greater revelation that you can come to, which is that the way in which you have suffered has had a result that has put you in a better place than where you were before. Like, that for me is the alchemical process of the Temperance card. And I think without meaning, suffering is simply that. It's suffering and experiencing pain, and there's no fucking point to it, none whatsoever. Where you can start to intuit the meaning, you can start inputting the meaning in terms of the changes that you're making in your life. That's where shit starts to get really, really profound, right? So the Temperance card also talks about balance and harmony and union, and these things that you're starting to feel like, I feel like you're starting to adjust yourself to the idea of here, you know, a sense of internal balance, which has been missing for quite a long time for you anyway, particularly with the way that your life's been characterized by so much upheaval in the last, let's say, 18 months, right? But the other thing that it talks about, and this is something that actually is making me feel quite emotional as I'm looking at it, is conquering adversity through hard work, right? We just take a look at the Temperance card here for a second. You can see, obviously, the angel dominates the card, but it's this here in the background that's drawing my attention. What we have is a mountain, a series of mountains, and a path that has, you know, presumably you have followed to get to where you are here, and a crown. Now, the symbolism of the crown is victory. It is having conquered something, and with the mountains representing adversity and challenges and, you know, all the sorts of things that you would associate with mountains, we have you having walked a very long, slow path that has been extremely fucking challenging, but here you are. You're in a place now where balance is finally something that you understand within yourself. And we've got one foot in the water and one foot on the ground here. It's a very grounded energy represented by the foot on the ground. But with the foot in the water too, there's that same willingness to be in one's emotions. It's a new willingness to be in one's emotions and actually explore what those mean for you, rather than attempting permanently to be in control. Like, we've talked a lot about this over the last few months. We've talked about abandonment issues, we've talked about control issues and where it is that they actually spring from. And I think, you know, just as I was talking about the dust of the tire settling, we've also got, you know, the notion that you are, you know, the hard times have passed, or the, you know, the harder lessons have passed, and now what we've got is that path that's taking you down to the water, that is allowing you to assimilate everything that you now understand about yourself and implement it, more importantly, into your life moving forwards. And it's interesting that we should start with the King of Pentacles here in your recent past, because the King of Pentacles represents Taurus. It's fixed earth, right? So it's that which is solid and dependable and reliable. But almost uniformly, when the King of Pentacles comes out, there is a really strong question of responsibility and how much of it you have taken on. Now, in some ways, all of the kings talk about responsibility in their own way, right? But it feels most pressing, most prominent when the King of Pentacles comes out. He likes to take responsibility for things, right? He shows up, that's what he does. And he's not afraid to put in the hard work for, you know, it's delayed gratification, right? For something that is going to happen at some point in the future. He doesn't have the immediacy of the King of Swords and the King of Wands. He is kind of plodding. It's a very slow moving energy. And he knows that he's not going to get the results that he wants immediately, because anything that's worth doing is worth doing well. And that means investing in that thing. The interesting aspect of this, with it coming up in reverse for you, is tying into this sense of duty and responsibility, the things that one should do, the things that one must do, the way that we kind of police our own behaviors and how we invest our resources, whatever those may be, out in the world. Because here for you, it seems to indicate the realization of just how much responsibility that you have taken on. I'm not talking about, doing a bit of extra stuff at work, wherever you're employed and things like that. It's that overwhelming sense of duty and responsibility that you feel for the well-being of other people. And this can manifest in all sorts of ways. But I would imagine it's that same thing that we've been talking about for quite a long time, Aries, where it's like you're looking around and there's nobody else who's going to be able to do the thing. Nobody else is volunteering to do the thing. Nobody seems to have the capacity to do the thing. So obviously you're going to do the thing because you can see a problem and you will not leave it undealt with, right? But what's really beautiful about this energy here is the extent to which you're beginning to realize that not all things are your responsibility. So you carrying friendships, right? Realizing that the level of investment between the two of you, or however many of these friendships there are, has been incredibly uneven for a long time, right? And there's so far you can take it and go, well, relationships are give and take of any description. They are give and take, and sometimes someone will do more of the heavy lifting than others. But we're looking at a pattern stretched out over a period of time, and it's like, where are you the one who always sorts things out? Where are you the one who is always arranging the things? Where is it that you are the one who is always taking the initiative? And were you not to do that, would these things still continue? Would these relationships still continue? Would the things that you do still continue? Or would they just wither on the vine? I think the answer is probably really quite clear for most of you, and it would be, it's going to wither on the vine. So the question is, has it actually been giving you anything? Or has it just been a point of stress for you? And I think the realization that you've come to is that there are so many situations, so many relationships that actually just function as points of stress. So the question is, why have you been perpetuating them for so long? Like, what is it that is keeping you there? What is it that has been keeping you in a place where being tense, being responsible, being dutiful was the correct state for you to be in? We're kind of looking at it with objective eyes and going, where does my happiness feature in here? Anywhere. There's the Nine of Cups. What effect has this had on my emotional well-being? Because it's all very well being the person who goes and picks things up, takes the slack when other people can't or won't do it. But as powerful as you are, Aries, there are only so many spoons in the drawer for each day. And when you begin to have your own issues, instead of being able to lean on other people, you've absolutely acknowledged that there's nobody who's going to be there for you. Trauma response. There's nobody who's going to be able to help you. So you need to do that as well. And the problem is that there are only so many spoons in the drawer. And what's happened this year, and it's been long and it's been slow and you've been really pushed to the brink, is that you've run out of spoons, to use the tumbler analogy. I think it is, right? It was actually an analogy that somebody drew to try and explain chronic illness. And it was this idea that you only have so many spoons in the drawer, right? And certain tasks will take more spoons than others. So if you have a chronic illness, just getting out of bed and brushing your teeth uses up one of your spoons. And you start trying to do other things, and there's spoons and the spoons and spoons. And then you get to halfway through the day and there aren't any spoons in the drawer, and you're like, fuck. Okay, well, I can borrow against tomorrow's spoons because that would be all right, So I've got an appointment this afternoon. I need to do that. I need to sort out my friend's love life, or I need to go and sort out something to do with my family, you know, I need to go sort something else out, or I'll just borrow 3 or 4 spoons from tomorrow, that'll be fine. Eventually it catches up with you, in so much as there are no more fucking spoons left in the drawer. And when you've got your own stuff going on, in addition to all of the other things that you very naturally have stood up and taken responsibility for, because leadership is baked into the DNA of an Aries, there are no more spoons to borrow. And you hit this point of absolute fucking exhaustion, where you are forced to rest against your fucking will. Well, that takes some spoons off you as well. And, you know, the more you resist this process, the longer it takes to recover from. I might have some experience of having been in exactly that position myself, can you tell? So I think for a lot of you it's family. I think it has been family. It might actually for some of you be living situations, because Taurus does represent homes and houses and property and stuff like that, right? Money as well too. So, you know, fiscal responsibilities and fiscal losses, housing, accommodation, that sort of thing, but family too, right? All the things that you feel dutiful about making sure that you provide for other people. Which is to say that all of this seems to have been what you have been thinking about for the last wee while. When I say recent past, I mean it literally could have been this morning that this is starting to kind of dawn on you, or we could be 6 weeks out, and everything in between. But it's this slow dawning realization that actually at every point you have compromised your own emotional well-being to take care of other people. And the problem is that you have walked away from any notion of the fact that you could be happy in order to almost voluntarily put yourself into this space here. Now, the thing that's probably missing from this set of cards, but I do feel the presence of quite strongly, is the Eight of Swords. It's always been about the way that you have been thinking about it, the way that you think about yourself, the way that you value yourself. Your self-worth is a huge thing here. It's like, well, I'm just simply not as important as everybody else, or I'm stronger than everybody else, so it falls to me, I am almost obligated to do all of these things for everyone else, because nobody else can do them. But this has been putting you into such a state of lack for such a long time. Like I said, Aries, there've been no fucking spoons left in the drawer whatsoever. Now, a few months ago, was it maybe 2 months ago, I think, I remember telling you that it was okay. You could breathe again. Like the tower has finished kicking the shit out of you. And now it's about resting. It's about working out what needs to change outside of you, inside of you, so that you can start moving forwards. But it still had a relatively static feel about it. I do think with this whole process of awareness now coming into your conscious mind in a way that you can truly appreciate, the movement is starting to begin. And we see that here with the Page of Wands, right? The Page of Wands is an initiation in terms of the way that we behave. But if you remember that I said at the beginning, it felt like these were tentative movements outside of you, where you were now starting to implement what it was that you have worked out for yourself. And the overwhelming majority of you, this is to do with relationships. And if you kind of think about anything, right, ultimately it does boil down to relationships. Even if it's a work thing, it's the relationship that you have with the people that you work with, your relationship with your boss. It's a question of authenticity. And this is why I'm really pleased to see the Emperor as well at the bottom of the deck, as well as kind of getting your shit together. It is, I am authentically showing up here. And there's an appreciation of the needs that you have not acknowledged up until this point. And do you know what, Aries, like, intimacy is a huge part of that. We've been talking about boundaries and the difference between boundaries and walls and all sorts of things for months now. And I think you've undergone somewhat of an overwhelming transformation in your understanding of what it is that relationships actually mean to you, what the purpose of them is. Some of you may have used them as fuel to keep driving yourself forwards. But the reality is there's something much gentler, actually, that you want from your relationships. There is an element of support that you would like from your relationships. Just not only to know that it's there if you need it, but that it is safe for you to even think about asking for help. Page of Wands isn't necessarily movement yet. It's getting ready to move in some sort of, fashion. But it's because all of the pieces need to kind of fit into place first. I mean, you might have really found out who your friends were in these last few months, but also correspondingly, you might have also realised how certain aspects of your personality, and to wit, I'm talking about the kind of more shadowy aspects of it, right? So insecurities, abandonment issues, those kind of things, have led to a certain type of behaviour for you that is almost guaranteed that the people that you drew towards you were the people who needed someone to sort their fucking shit out for them all the time, because frankly they just weren't capable of doing it themselves. And in this way, it must have felt very much to you like there's you, strong, disciplined, motivated, driven to do whatever needs to be done, with actually a really strong, and this is something that is missed, right? There's a really, really strong sense of empathy and compassion for other people. But it's been feeding into this kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. You want to help. You don't want to see other people struggle. You don't want to see other people suffer. So you'll do it because it needs to be done, right? Really driven, motivated to get everything done. But by definition, the quality of the relationships that are around you are going to be resonating also at that frequency. And if you're lucky, you'll have noticed over the last few months that you have some relationships where that is not the case. And there has perhaps been an increasing awareness that those are the quality relationships that you want to kind of move towards, right? Because the Knight of Pentacles here, as it is, right, we've got somewhat of a step back from the King of Pentacles, right? I'm not in charge of everything all the time. I'm not responsible for everything all the time. And I'm in a very slow, careful process of discovering my own personal value and trying to put that first. And it is trying, Aries, because, we can intellectually appreciate something until the cows come home, but actually putting it into practice, implementing it, is an entirely different consideration. And that is something that needs to be done slowly, because you're liable to, well, look, right, you're putting yourself into a position of vulnerability. That is something that is deeply uncomfortable for an Aries to do. I think it's deeply uncomfortable for any fire sign. Some of the other signs, some of the other elements feel much more comfortable about that than we do. And there's something inherently stressful about that. So it has to be little steps. It has to be done gently. Take a couple of steps forwards, check where we are. Are we safe? Is everything okay? Have I made a fucking terrible mistake? Which is, often something that we'll think at points in this process. And if the answer is no, and everything's okay, and you'll still stay safe, then it's okay to go a little bit further. And taking it really slowly. Even just the fact that you're taking it slowly is quite uncomfortable in and of itself for you, but you are unraveling a conditioned set of patterns that have been decades in the making. Rome wasn't built in a day, and there's absolutely no chance that you're just going to fix this overnight, right? You're unpicking these things one at a time, and your own personal safety, your energy levels, the amount of power that you feel that you have, it's going to return to you slowly. And it's a very different experience to the way that you have felt powerful before, the way that you have considered that you might have felt supported before. And it's really important that within this process, you don't lose sight of the perspective that you have gained over this last 18-month period. Right? We don't ever want to go back to where we were. So it's all got to be done carefully, and we've got to make sure that actually what energy we have is going where it needs to go. We've got the Four of Pentacles here and the King of Swords. And the King of Swords is Aquarius, but it is also your decision-making process. I mean, for some of you, it's people in positions of authority. So, excuse me, accountants, doctors, surgeons, lawyers, that sort of thing, right? It's people who can make really sound decisions without having to consult their emotions about it. In fact, they do put their emotions to one side so that they're not overwhelmed by that aspect of it, and they just try and have things turn on their own facts, right? And I think that that's the process that you're trying to get through. Like, you realize that your thinking has been muddied and clouded for a considerable period of time because there have been these overwhelming emotions that have come up, and because there has been this absolute feeling of being lost for quite a long time, to the extent that it's been very, very difficult for you to trust your own judgment, right? We're rebuilding the process here so that you can trust that again. And whether that involves people in positions of authority or not, the Four of Pentacles has us questioning very mindfully at every point the foundations of what we have considered to be important versus what we now understand to be important, because those things are very, very different. And where we've considered something to be important, and now increasingly we're seeing that it's been as a result of trauma or any one of a number of things that has caused us to overinvest in situations that should have been the responsibility of somebody else. We need to be able to decide whether that is something that really serves us moving forwards, and the answer is likely not. But there are going to be things that are vitally important. As I said, you're trying to put this up front and centre to create new foundations, and they are new foundations within relationships. Like I said, whether or not you have been surrounded by the best people or the worst people, that is a reflection of what energy you have been putting out there into the universe. So we always get back to us a mirror of what we actually are, and that is going to piss a lot of people off. It would have pissed me off a few years ago if you'd told me that, because I would have snapped instantly into a very defensive victim mindset and been like, all right, so it's all my fault, is it? Of course it is, you know. Now I'm looking at it and going, well, okay, right, I probably was super neurotic, probably was super paranoid, very low self-esteem, you know, with inversely proportional amount of confidence that I was throwing out into the world, because fuck you world, I don't need anything to do with any of you at all, when secretly I'm kind of like, I'm falling apart and I have to do all this by myself, right? As you yourself are changing, you're going to see different qualities in different people. You're going to attract a different kind of person towards you. And I think this tentative move towards experimenting with vulnerability, experimenting with not being responsible for everybody else's shit, it's a slow process. And like I said, you need to stop. You need to check. It's not about thrusting yourself forwards and just getting on with the job, right? All fire signs pride themselves on being resilient, but we tend to have a fairly warped idea of what resilience looks like. And certainly we seem to have a warped idea of what self-reliance looks like. Because the traumatized perspective that I see in fire signs all the time is, fuck you, I'll do it myself. I will always do everything myself, and it becomes that point of pride, right? Psychopathically independent. But when we understand that there is a considerable amount of value to interdependent relationships where we can lean on people, people can lean on us, and the sum of what we can create is so much more than the whole of what we can create. It can be so much more than the sum of its parts. It's about starting to come together with people, right? Starting to truly understand what it means to belong somewhere and be part of something, rather than the person who's up front dragging everybody else behind them. It's exhausting. Now, the beautiful thing about this that I see for you, Aries, and you know, this is probably heralded as much by the fact that the North Node is in your sign as anything else, is that when your energy is freed up from having to drag everybody else fucking along behind you, what incredible things would you have the ability to be able to, or the energy to be able to initiate? What things would you do that you can't currently do? You know, we often hear the question bandied around of like, what would you do if you knew for a fact that you couldn't fail? Well, I think failure is something that all fire signs have big fucking issues with, right? We have a huge fear of failure. It's not a word that we tend to allow into our lexicon, but not for the reasons that people think. Like, often it is because we feel that sense of duty and responsibility so hard that there are so many people depending on us that to fail is to let them down. Right? Problem is that we've taken too much on. We've taken other people's stuff on as well. So my question to you would not be one necessarily to do with failure, although I think, you know, meditating on failure and what that feels like to you would be a useful thing. It would be, what would you do if you knew that you didn't have to pass out all of your spoons from your drawer every day to other people? What would you do if you could actually approach something in the spirit of creativity and passion, rather than this relentless drive that comes from within to do all the things for all the people all the time? And this is all stuff that's going on in the background, but certainly in your current energy, like I said, there's this tentative approach towards doing relationships differently. It's not without its challenges, because it's so different to the way that you've been doing things before, but it is taking you slowly, inexorably, consistently towards a better set of decision-making processes than you've had access to before. Now, when we come into your current, into your energy for October, we've got the Knight of Swords, Gemini energy, with the Magician and the Two of Wands, and I think that October will be quite a powerful month for you, in so much as the focus is very much now on creation. It's about manifestation, right? We see that with the Magician card all the time, right? If you can imagine it, you can build it, and they will come, and all that sort of stuff, right? There's so much emphasis has been put on deconstruction and almost, in fact, just destruction, full stop, of you, your identity. Everything to do with your whole fucking experience in the last 18 months seems to have, in some way or another, absolutely hit the deck. And you're like, what the fuck? There was a tower here a minute ago, and now there's just nothing but collapsing fucking stuff. The dust has settled on that. And with these slow foundational moves that you are making, and certainly in the area of relationships and experiences of intimacy, and realizing that you do have emotional needs and that they have been consistently not met for a very long time, and further still, it's because you haven't been meeting them, and you haven't been telegraphing to the universe in any way whatsoever that you were interested in having those kind of relationships, right? And kind of bringing it back to yourself, because that's all changing and shifting, and we don't need to worry about the tower collapsing anymore. What we've got here is you speaking and thinking into existence the idea that the changes can start coming in thicker and faster, right? So the Knight of Swords, obviously Gemini energy, is very, very concerned with communication. But for me, it's about the transmission of information, right? So we go from, you know, one part of the brain to the other. It's the quality of your thought processes, something that you are quite preoccupied with at the moment, right? Have you identified the self-critic, the negative self-talk that you engage in quite, you know, the extent to which it happens in the background and you're not even aware of it, right? I remember tuning into the voice of my inner critic really clearly once, sat on my sofa, where I thought, oh, I'd like to do that thing, and then I was like, oh, you're stupid, why are you even thinking about doing that thing? This was a few years ago. And just drawing up short, because I heard the voice so fucking clearly, and it was my mother's voice, interestingly enough. And me being startled, because it was so needlessly negative. And the immediate reaction I had to it was just like, oh yeah, it was stupid to even think about that. But I found myself interrogating that, like, where have you come from? Why have you said that thing? Like, we haven't even looked into this yet. Why would that be a stupid thing to do? That's not a logical position to take. And yet, there was a whole process here of the inner critic sounding off, me actually hearing it, me responding and going, yeah, you're right. And then going, whoa, hang on. I didn't consent to this little interchange that's just happened here. And it made me start realising how much of a script there was running in the background of my mind. And how many times I turned away from opportunities. I turned away from initiating something new in some aspect of my life, because I'd already decided that I was going to fail before I'd even looked into it. So the quality of your thoughts, huge this month, but the quality of your communication outside of you too, because I think as you are shifting the blocks around in your foundation, and you're like, actually this block fits here, this is where this is supposed to be, you're creating this firm foundation for yourself moving forward. I think the nature of the kind of language that is coming out of your mouth is changing too. And it might be that there are particular phrases that are now not permitted to leave your mouth. Oh, I'll do it. I'll sort it out, don't worry. Those things, I feel like you're kind of stopping. And before the words leave your mouth, considering what it is that you are committing yourself to, how it is that you might be overextending, you know, how it's so fucking reflexive with you that you don't even give it a second thought. And being in a position where you do give it a second thought. But also, on the other side of the coin, I feel like there's a willingness to start articulating things that you have not articulated before. Certain insights into yourself that you have, that you are now comfortable enough that you can feel, that you feel that you can relay them to other people in the spirit of allowing a deeper intimacy to occur with other people. Very discerning about this. This is choice people that you're picking. It's not just anyone. But it's almost like you're speaking the new version of yourself into existence, Aries. You know what it's like when we have an idea about something, or we have something that's kind of chewing away inside of us, and we don't really have words for it, and so it just feels like a state of discomfort somewhere in the body. And then all of a sudden we say it, right? Somebody will say something to us and we'll just cut, and we'll go, oh God, that's what I think about that. That's where the problem is. It's in the act of articulation that quite often I truly begin to understand what it is that I do feel about something, or what I do think about something, because otherwise it just kind of swirls around in a big boiling mass inside of me, and I have to kind of tease it out like spun sugar, or fucking cotton wool. They're not cotton wool, but they call it candy floss, something like that. Suddenly it has form, it has shape, and everything changes energetically around us when we get to the point where we actually articulate something outside of ourselves. And the important thing about this, Aries, is that the spoons that you have dedicated to creating a particular front, all right, and that front being constructed of what you want everybody else to see about you, but actually what you secretly want to be too, right? And this relentless drive to try and be that person. There's a willingness to step back from this and go, actually, if I drop the front, if I allow people to see me as I actually am, I have lost count of the number of Aries that have commented on videos that I've done readings for, who've said, I like being the strong one. I like being the one who fixes things for people. I like being able to help. But sometimes when things are really fucking hard and everybody just goes, oh, it's okay, Aries will do it, I kind of die a little bit inside, because I need help and I don't know how to ask for it, or I need help and nobody's there for me to do that. It's because you never show any vulnerability, Aries. It's because it's reflexive in the minds of other people that of course Aries is going to do it, because Aries always does it, and Aries is strong, and Aries is all of these things. And in order for you to change the quality of the relationships around you, and even, you know, the people with whom you spend time, that which you hide from yourself, which is that there are points in time where you aren't strong, and there are points in time where you do need support, like without actually articulating that to other people, how the fuck would people know? And I think for a lot of you, it's that refusal to even accept it within yourself that has been the biggest stumbling block. You know, now you've been in a state of starting to accept that about yourself, there's an increasing comfort. Like I said, it's kind of tentative. We're moving forwards a little bit. I'll check where we are, say a thing. Did we die? We didn't die, so it's okay, we can move a little bit further. Once you start being able to articulate that vocally, it changes your behavior. It's also changing the way that people see you, because they're actually getting to see the real you, Aries. And I think that a lot of people around you are going to be startled by it. But I also think that a lot of people around you are going to have their respect for you deepened when they understand the extent to which you have actually struggled with things, and you've still fucking shown up. You've still been there. You've still been strong. I think people are going to see you as stronger than this front that you've been trying to put up for the longest time. It feels counterintuitive, but I can absolutely guarantee you that it is the case, because we assume that people can see inside of us. Sometimes we have a terror that people can see inside of us, and we put more and more of our spoons into making sure that they can't. But at the same time, then we blame them when they don't see that we need support, or what we actually need is a hug. What we need is somebody not to put a fucking demand on us in some sort of way. Dropping the front, dropping the persona, dropping, more importantly, the expectation that you have to be all things to all people all the time. Is going to completely change your reality, Aries. And that's what I love about this Two of Wands here, because it feels like agency is returning to you. I feel like the bigger changes are probably going to start at least being contemplated this month. But this energy here and this work here, I think, is taking more of the it's occupying more of your attention than the act of creation. But there's something that feels like it's gaining momentum over here. And like I said, the return of agency to you, your ability to be able to start thinking about what it is that you want to do, the way that you want to live, how you want to show up in the world. Like, there's more space to contemplate this here than there has been at any other point. And so the question of what you, Aries, are going to create becomes much more pertinent. And it isn't even so much as, right, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and this is what my life's going to look like here. It feels a little bit more abstract than that. It's the return of hope. It's the return of a sense of connection to infinite possibility. It's not infinite yet, but it's certainly going that way, because everything's feeling much more positive. And the more that you can articulate what is going on within you, right, so that other people understand in the first instance, but actually is an exercise in understanding where it is that your thinking might be a little bit wonky. Just saying it out loud is often the thing. How many times have we bottled something up for a really long time, and then we just splurged it out to somebody. Oh God, I actually feel loads better now I said that out loud. Because we've got it off our chest. Problem shared is a problem halved and all that bullshit, right? But there's actually something in there. We're not holding it in the body anymore. We're just letting it out, and then we can release it. We can let it go. But how many times have you articulated something that you've been really panicking about, really worrying about, and then when it hits the air and it crystallizes, you're like, just stop. Just got stuck in the echo chamber of my own head. Now I've said it out loud, it doesn't actually seem like it's that big a deal. I can actually deal with it better now I've said it out loud than I could before. It would be very easy for a lot of Aries to feel legitimately like a victim. There are reasons. There are a lot of shit things have happened. You've been really under some incredible tension. But a far more powerful viewpoint, and the one that I think that you're starting to adopt, is the realization that you've been broken out of a particular mindset that has been making you miserable and exhausted for the longest time. Now, would you want to go through it again? Absolutely fucking not. No. Please, God, no. But the idea of emotional fulfillment, the idea of you being able to manage your emotions but also share those with people, understand what it feels like to belong, to be intimate, to be part of something, is starting to outweigh any fears that you've had about showing the world who you actually are. And no shit that it's going to be intense when the North Node's in your sign. Not only is it the initiation of a new cycle and all those kind of things, but it's like the I am of the Aries is it's very concentrated right now. So it would make sense that you were experiencing it in this intense fashion. But in some ways, all the ways, you're leading the way for the rest of the zodiac to follow. And there's something very inspiring about the way you're alchemizing what you have experienced, that cannot help but affect the people around you. I feel like the return of agency to you in October feels like the biggest blessing that you could have had, because it's so very important for you to be autonomous and in charge of yourself and self-directed and all those kind of things, and you felt anything but for the last 18 months. But it's coming back, and it's directly related to your ability to be able to articulate what's going on in here. Getting back in touch, in contact with the concept of infinite possibility and the hope that springs therefrom. This is wonderful. Right, I'm going to go over to the extended now. You can join me over on Vimeo, or you can join me, fucking hell, on Circle. It's up to you, or you don't have to join me at all. It's perfectly fine either way. But if this is where we part ways, and just know that although that it is a little uncomfortable at this point, you are absolutely headed in the right direction, and it will not be this difficult in perpetuity. Right, we've got a lot of fucking planets in retrograde at the moment as well. I mean, that's something worth bearing in mind. 7 at current count? 6? It'll be 6. But Mercury is going direct actually mid-September, and the energy of that will be washing away by the time we come into October. Like, there'll be much more forward motion and momentum coming up, but directly related to your articulation. So bear that in mind, Aries. And if there's something that you think and you don't say, this is the month to tackle that. My stomach's gurgling furiously. Lord, something's being released for you this month, at least. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.